My last two pea puffer and shrimp aquascapes generated quite a few questions and comments about the pufferfish eating all of the shrimp. So in this video, I'm going to explain how I've managed to keep pea puffers with shrimp while still having a steadily growing population of shrimp. First up, I am going to say that the stigma around pea puffers eating shrimp seems a little bit exaggerated, and I'm sure that statement's going to trigger quite a few people, as I'm sure some people have had some horror stories. But it's more than likely because they starved their puffers or didn't give them the right environment to live in. However, if you have experienced a situation like this, drop a comment. I'd love to hear what you have to say. So to present my case here, I'm going to walk you through my first pea puffer and shrimp tank design, the build process, how I managed the puffer aggression, and their desire to hunt. When my girlfriend and I put this tank together, we knew it would be home to 6 pea puffers, which meant it needed to have line of sight breaks to help reduce any random bouts of aggression. These little fish are quite social and should be kept in groups of 6, but sometimes they like to chase each other in little territorial disputes. So in order to make this work, we made 2 small rock islands with decent sized rocks that act as really good line of sight breaks, essentially blocking sight from 4 different sides, allowing fish to hide in any one of 4 primary different positions. So if any fish needed to swim away, it could easily move to a new spot completely out of sight of the others, or hide in one of the small caves in some of the rock formations. While this seems super simple and not all that likely to work, it worked extremely well and we didn't have any issues with aggression related incidents. We also added a ton of grassy plants to the background, which the puffers quite often tucked themselves into whenever they wanted to hide. The next part of this process is super important, so pay close attention. Since pea puffers are active hunters and they spend almost all day hunting, they need something to hunt, and their preferred prey is snails. Predators will always go after the easiest meal they can find, especially if it's something they specialize in and enjoy. So by exploiting this characteristic of pea puffers, you can get away with keeping them with shrimp quite easily. However, they are exceptionally efficient hunters and will plow through a small population of snails really quickly, so you'll need to make sure you have an endless supply of snails on hand to move into the tank as soon as the population gets low. On top of this, we also make sure to feed our pea puffers 3 times a week, and they usually get bloodworms. By using dwarf hairgrass and other carpeting plants, we've also made it far more tricky for the pufferfish to hunt down the snails, as they can't always get down to the base of the hairgrass to pick off any of the smaller ones. So they have to wait and ambush them as they emerge. You can find the full build video for this tank linked in the description. So to test if this theory would work with shrimp, we added a small group of low-grade shrimp from another tank and waited to see what would happen with the population. First, we waited to see if any of them went missing, which they didn't. Then after a month, we saw the first female buried, which was followed by a small population boom. Then the shrimp population doubled and tripled and became a source of shrimp for other tanks. So the methodology worked perfectly. But since a single success like this doesn't actually mean much on its own, we decided to repeat a similar scenario in the same tank with similar design concepts using different materials and plants. We also swapped 3 of our puffers with a friend who also has puffers to test if the fish we had were just friendly. For the new scape, we created the same basic 2-island line of sight block, however the plants in the background were a little thicker and more clumpy this time, so they added some extra line of sight barriers and extra hidey holes. We also added a full carpet of hairgrass, which allows the baby shrimp and snails to hide in plain sight, where the puffers can't easily get them. For the entire build video for this tank, you can find that linked in the description as well. Once the tank was established, and the puffers and snails and shrimp were added, we started the observation process again, using the same feeding methods as I mentioned before. When we saw the snail population was getting low, we added more, and as always, continued to feed the tank with bloodworms a few times a week. And just like in the previous example, the shrimp population exploded, even more so than last time, primarily because we started off with a higher population of shrimp to begin with. So essentially, to make this work, all you need to do is exploit the predator's desire for an easy meal and make sure that the option is always on the table. Why would a pufferfish bother hunting down a fast-moving shrimp when it has an unlimited supply of easy-to-catch snails and bloodworms on hand?